Hey everyone, it's Wolfgang. There are too many home sellers, too many homes for sale in the US right now. There are about 500,000 more homes for sale than there are home buyers right now in the US. This is the end of May 2025. The US housing market is basically broken. The lowest home sales in 30 years occurred in 2024. The lowest home sales since 1995 occurred in the most recent year ended 2024. So the housing market's broken. The very low sales numbers, lots of homes for sale, not enough buyers. So what is going on? Why is the housing market broken? There's more than one issue involved in this, so I will explain. Why is real estate in poor shape? Okay, the first reason, high interest rates. We're getting close to 7% interest rates on 30-year fixed rate mortgages for a home, 7% interest rates. The monthly mortgage payment you make when you get a home loan is based on that interest rate. The mortgage interest rate, 7% annually, determines your monthly payment for your home mortgage. And when you apply for a loan, your debt to income ratio with that mortgage payment is determined by the lender. The lender will figure out what your monthly mortgage payment will be. They will add that to all the other debts you have, car loan, student loan, regular monthly payments, and then they'll compare it to your monthly income. And if the debt is too high relative to the income, you will not qualify. I read something that said about 1 in 5 people applying for a mortgage right now are getting approved. 1 in 5. About 21% of people who apply right now are actually able to get approved for a home loan. Interest rates are high. If you have a car loan, if you have a student loan, if your income has not been rising, and for a lot of people it hasn't been rising over the last period, it's very difficult to get approved. You have about an 80% chance of being rejected for a home loan. So that's part of the reason that the U.S. housing market is broken right now. High interest rates have created a lot of discouraged buyers. Discouragement means they have stopped looking for a home to buy. They've just given up. Maybe they've applied at more than one lender. They keep getting turned down. They become discouraged. They stop even trying. A discouraged home buyer has stopped looking for a home. There's 500,000 more homes for sale than buyers. So I want to point something out that may not be obvious. A reasonable question is, we know from the multiple listing service, we can determine how many homes are for sale at any given time. They get listed for sale on the MLS. And looking across the country, the number of homes for sale on any given day can be determined pretty accurately because they're going to be listed in the local multiple listing service, the local MLS. Add them all up, you get the number of homes for sale. So where are the buyers? How are the buyers being counted? Because unlike homes for sale, when a buyer wants to buy a home, there's no equivalent like an MLS for buyers. I want to buy a home right now, right? So it's actually pretty straightforward. All the real estate websites that offer homes for sale, that advertise homes for sale, anytime a user logs in and looks for a home for sale, they can keep track of those numbers. And across the country, they can pretty easily determine how many people are looking to buy a home from the data. When somebody logs into one of the homes for sale websites and starts looking at homes for sale, you've identified a home buyer. So that's how they're figuring out that there's 500,000 more listed homes than there are buyers. There's just a big shortfall of people. And a lot of this reason is because of the high interest rates. People have become discouraged about not qualifying for the loan. You have a 21% chance of being approved. The interest rates are high. If the interest rates were lower, right, it would be easier to pass this hurdle, this debt to income hurdle. Because if the interest rates were much lower, or even a little lower, the monthly mortgage payment would drop, and then more people would qualify. They'd be able to handle the monthly payment. But that's where we are right now. Interest rates are high. So there's an abundant number of homes for sale based on data from home buying searches, websites, basically, keeping track of how many people are looking for a home to buy. So we know how many homes are for sale. We know how many people are looking to buy a home. We have about 500,000 more homes for sale than there are buyers. So what is needed to restore a normal real estate market? Because remember, we've had the lowest home sales in 30 years. For the entire year of 2024, sales had not been that low since 1995. So the home market is out of whack. So what needs to happen for the home buying market to recover? The first thing is interest rates need to drop. And the second thing is lower asking prices. So the other factor that's hurting people from being able to qualify to buy a home is home prices are high. Relatively speaking, home prices are high. The bigger factor, though, is the interest rates. The mortgage interest rates are high. That's the biggest issue. If home prices were lower, that would help people qualify also. So those two things, lower interest rates, and if sellers would drop their prices, more people could qualify to buy a home. So if you think about this, the number of sellers out there, 500,000 more sellers than buyers, sellers are starting to get the idea that they're probably going to have to lower prices. So this is actually happening in some parts of the U.S., not in all parts of the U.S. In some parts of the country, I believe in the Northeast, home sales are still happening, doing pretty well. The real estate market in the Northeast supposedly is pretty good. So what's the likelihood of lower interest rates? What's the likelihood that 7% interest rates are going to go away? Because this is relatively high compared to not that long ago. You could get a 3% mortgage. You could get a 3% interest rate mortgage in 2021. It was in 2021, 3%, right? 7% now. Just a couple of years ago, 3% mortgages were available. So mortgage interest has more than doubled. Not good. 2008 and 9 crash, the 2008 and 2009 real estate crash created this low interest rate. As the country was trying to recover from that massive crash in 2008 and 2009, interest rates were lowered basically to the floor. You know, it was called zero interest rate policy, ZIRP. If you look up ZIRP online, it explains what that was. That's how 3% mortgage interest rates happened. So that's not going to happen again. Okay. The only way 3% mortgages are going to come back is if we had another 2008, 2009 crash. And that is very unlikely because the government changed the rules to make sure that the 2008 and 2009 crash cannot happen again. The rules were changed. It's going to be a very long period of time, if ever, that mortgage rates will drop to 3%. That's just the truth. So the National Association of Realtors has predicted mortgage rates will fall from 7% down to 6.1% next year. This year, not so much. We're not expecting a big drop in interest rates in all of 2025. There's a lot of reasons for that. The fact that the Federal Reserve does not want to change interest rates, that's a part of the reason. By the way, the 3% interest rates, how was that achieved? The Federal Reserve lowered interest rates to the floor, and all the banks followed. That's how that happened. So some people are claiming that, I've read this in some places online, that even if the Fed lowered interest rates, that would not lower mortgage rates. That's baloney. The 3% interest rates that were possible just a short time ago were created by the Fed dropping rates to near zero after the 2008-09 crash. The Federal Reserve lowered interest rates dramatically because of the crash in 2008 and 09, and that's why 3% interest rates became possible. And actually, rates got below that. There were times where you could get a 2.5% mortgage not that long ago. So the National Association of Realtors thinks that mortgage interest rates will drop to 6.1% next year, not this year. So that's the likelihood of lower interest rates. Not too likely this year, and next year they're not going to be lowered by that much, based on the projections, the National Association of Realtors. Okay, what's the likelihood of lower home prices this year? Okay, so this is the this is the unhappy part of this. There's a consensus that home prices are actually going to increase this year between 1.3% to 4.1% in 2025. And I'll tell you the data sources for that. The data sources for this range, 1.3 to 4.1% home price increase, came from the National Association of Realtors, Fannie Mae, the Mortgage Bankers Association, Housing Wire, Redfin, Bank of America, and some other institutions and companies that track home prices. So why, if there's so many more homes for sale than buyers, how could homes increase in value? Well, there's a belief that, and it may not be correct, okay, it may not be correct, but there's a belief that the lower supply of, because right now the home builders have slowed their activity. They're not building as many new homes. They're having trouble selling inventory, so they've actually cut back on homes. So relatively speaking, there's a lot more people, even though there's many people being kept out of the home buying market, a lot of people would like to buy, right? They would love to buy a home. They're just being kept out of the home market because of the debt to income ratio and the high interest rates. If interest rates did manage to drop somehow, in other words, if this 6.1% is off, let's say interest rates drop to, I don't know, 5.5% this year, that would be unexpected, but anything's possible in an economy, a dynamic economy. If interest rates really did drop, a lot more people would qualify for a home, and this excess number of homes for sale would vanish pretty quickly, because 4 out of 5 people are being prevented from buying a home because of the interest rates. If interest rates drop, all those people who want to buy a home will qualify. The excess number of homes for sale will drop, and so it's possible, not likely in my opinion, but it's possible that this consensus is right, that home prices will actually increase. But that's consensus based on data from the National Association of Realtors, Fannie Mae, Mortgage Bankers Association, Housing Wire, Redfin, Bank of America, and other institutions and companies. That's their consensus. 1.3% to 4.1% increase in home prices in 2025. In my opinion, when these 500,000 excess number of sellers get desperate, they're going to start dropping prices, and prices could crash, because in some parts of the country, home sellers are already dropping their asking prices. I saw an article today. Someone had bought a home for $1.5 million. Where was that? A $1.5 million home, currently on the market for 1.2 and looking at all offers. Bought it for $1.5 million just a couple years ago, now trying to sell it for a $300,000 loss, $1.2 million. So some sellers are getting desperate. If interest rates are sticky and they don't drop, and this continues to be a problem with high interest rates and people being kept out of the market, all these sellers, they're going to start getting, more and more desperate, and they'll start lowering their prices. So I don't think, even though the consensus from all these companies and institutions is an increase in home prices, I think home prices are going to drop. I don't think they're going to go up this year, because I don't think interest rates are going to fall. I think, based on the Federal Reserve, and I posted a video about this, as to what's going on with the Federal Reserve, why they're incompetent. They're behaving as if they're incompetent with the interest rate policy. A prior video, I explained that. I think it was day before yesterday. I don't think interest rates are going to drop very much. I would be surprised if they dropped this much, 6.1% next year. I think they're going to stay high as long as Jerome Powell is in charge, and he's in charge until the middle of 2026. So I don't think we're going to reach that. We're going to drop interest rates that low. I could be wrong. And if I'm wrong, all these homes that are currently for sale will be taken up, because there's 4 out of 5 people are being prevented from buying a home because interest rates are too high. So it's quite possible that if interest rates stay elevated, though, that sellers will start dropping their prices more than they are now. So just to drive that point home, a lot of people are aware of the 3% mortgage homeowners, people who have a home, have a 3% mortgage interest loan on their home. And it's called a lock-in effect. If you look up homeowner locked-in 3% mortgage, you can read all about that. Homeowners who do not want to sell their home right now, because they know if they turn around and buy the next home, they're going to be paying more than double the interest rate, 7%. And so they're not putting their homes on the market. If interest rates do drop and the 4 out of 5 people currently being prevented from buying are able to qualify for a loan, there could be up to like 1 million more homes for sale than buyers, because all of the locked-in people, all the people locked into 3% mortgages will suddenly decide to move. If mortgage interest drops into the fives, like 5.5%, the lock-in effect will start to disappear, and the number of homes for sale will skyrocket. I mean, this is pretty bad now, the fact that there's 500,000 more homes for sale than buyers, okay? But if interest rates start going down and more buyers jump in, well, there's going to be a lot more sellers simultaneously, and I think this number could increase. It could actually get worse, at least for a little while, until the housing market becomes more balanced. Right now, the housing market is broken. People can't afford to qualify for a loan. The number of homes for sale is increasing. Every month, the number of homes for sale jumps up, and Powell is not going to lower interest rates. They did in 2008 and 2009, but he was not in charge of the Fed at that time. It was somebody else. At that time, they lowered interest rates to recover from the crash, but he's a stubborn person. He's not going to lower interest rates. I don't think, maybe once this year, but they're behaving incompetently. If you watch the video I posted, there's a nuance about inflation. There's two kinds of inflation. I discuss it in that video. Demand pull inflation, that's too much money chasing too few goods, prices go up. Everyone knows that type of inflation. Interest rate policy can fix that. And Powell started fixing that when he started increasing interest rates in October of 2022. The other kind of inflation is called cost push inflation. And Powell is claiming that he can use these high interest rates to fix cost push inflation. Cost push inflation is when a company says, we're paying tariffs, our profit margins are suffering, so we're going to raise prices for our products. That's called cost push inflation. It has nothing to do with too much money chasing too few goods. It's totally different. Powell is claiming that he can fix cost push inflation. He can somehow use interest rates to get companies to lower prices for their products. It's never going to work. They're raising prices because of the tariffs, not because too many people have too much money. He already fixed that problem. So he's a stubborn person, perhaps incompetent, or maybe both. So I think 7% will be with us for a while. I think this number is going to grow. I think the home sellers are going to start getting desperate and start lowering their prices. But for the rest of 2025, the U.S. housing market is going to remain broken. That's just my opinion. So that's not great news, I understand. But I think that's where we are right now with it. If you have any questions about this, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And you can post in the comments and I'll try to answer. And I really want to thank everyone for watching. Have a great day.